might as well film it. I'm reading the laws of chaos. The first chaotic law is that the truth is different for everyone. Like all these principles, this one maintains that each is separate and has a different set of thoughts that set him off from others. This principle evolves from the belief there is a hierarchy of illusions, some more valuable and therefore true. Each one establishes this for himself and makes it true by his attack on one another's values. So this is what's going on in society. So we're going to attack someone else. And this is justified because the values differ and those who hold them seem to be unlike and therefore enemies. Think how this seems to interfere with the first principle of miracles. For this establishes degrees of truth among illusions, making it seem that some of them are harder to overcome than others. I think the first principle of miracles is that every miracle is the same, it's solving the same problem, and that there's no order in the hierarchy of miracles, meaning that none are harder than any others. That's what it is. If it were realized that they are all the same and equally untrue, it would be easy then to understand that miracles apply to all of them. Errors of any kind can be corrected because they are untrue. When brought to truth instead of to each other, they merely disappear. No part of nothing can be more resistant to the truth than can another. It's written so
there you go.
Intensely.
You have someone that believes what they believe is the truth, so you should go away.
Right, so then we have people arguing, my truth is more important than your truth, but really neither one is truth, and that's why they can argue about it, and it seems like one is right, or they're right, and another person's wrong. But if you brought it to real truth, that we're all the same, I guess, and just expressing, right? The second law of chaos. Dear indeed to every worshiper of sin, and sin in this book is a lack of love. Neville Goddard defined sin the other day as missing the mark, which I thought was interesting. So the second law of chaos, dear indeed to every worshiper of sin, is that each one must sin and therefore deserves attack and death. And this is fascinating because this strikes right at Christianity. I mean, this strikes that is one of their main laws, and it explains here why it's so bad. So is that each one must sin and therefore deserves attack and death. This principle, closely related to the first, is the demand that errors call for punishment and not correction. For this destruction of the one who makes the error places him beyond correction and beyond forgiveness. What he has done is thus interpreted as an irrevocable sentence upon himself, which God himself is powerless to overcome. Sin cannot be remitted, being the belief the Son of God can make mistakes for which his own destruction becomes inevitable. That's pretty hardcore. So that's saying if we believe that our sin excuses destruction and death, because we believe it and we're powerful creators, then God can't even get in the way of that. Like, we don't even allow for God to forgive it, right? It's like, you're going to die, you're going to hell, and God wants this for you. So I've never heard it put this way, because if you're with Christians, they'll be like, well, of course, if you sin, you can't be with God. But we don't see in that we've literally taken all the power away from God. He's actually powerless to overcome it himself, and that we can actually make a mistake, which excuses our destruction, which goes against the laws of God that are also in this book. Think what this seems to do to the relationship between the Father and the Son. Now it appears that they can never be one again, for one must always be condemned, and by the other. So because we believe that we're born sinful and must be sinful, we're automatically creating separation in that belief system. And that's one of the core Western belief systems. And actually, again, the Neville Goddard thing I was listening to yesterday was talking about there's only one Son and only one Father, only one Trinity, only one mind, only one body. So that's fascinating. It goes along with what's in this book, oddly enough, even though this wasn't around then, saying that it's one sonship, one connection. And so if you break it here, and claim that there's no way that these two can go together, you're basically completely condemning the sonship and creating full-on separation that's irrevocable, which is causing a lot of the suffering, I guess, is what this is getting at. For one must always be condemned and by the other. Now are they different and enemies. So this is how we're making ourselves different from God. And their relationship...
He's here to judge me.
He's here to judge me, and I can't be like him. So now I'm stuck, and I can't connect with the one thing that would be my one solution.
Because I'm being judged.
That's right. And when we're...
Makes quite the loop.
And I think that's why Abraham gets into calling it your inner being and doesn't even get into this conversation, because it's like a toxic conversation that's kind of an absolute and bred into us. Even if we're not Christians, a lot of this thinking gets into us because it's so deeply embedded in our culture. So now we're different from our father and enemies, and their relationship is one of opposition, just as the separate aspects of the sun meet only to conflict and not to join. So this book gets into the replication of that. So that's saying that now, human to human, now we're only conflicting. Now we can't be together. And we're just replicating that conflict with our father now with each other.
Also, if I think I'm better than you, that means I get to judge you.
Right, that's...
the separation, replication.
This book's really trippy because that's exactly what it says. Because you're a creator, everything replicates. So if you believe that about your father, then you believe that about others. So it's true. It allows for that judgment, right? And putting myself...
I get to judge you because I'm better.
You did something that deserves, that's irrevocable, that deserves sin and damnation, right? Yeah. And I didn't, so I'm better. One becomes weak, the other strong by his defeat, and fear of God and of each other now appears as sensible, made real by what the Son of God has done both to himself and his Creator. Of course, if you think God's out to get you, it makes sense to fear him. Why would you want to join with it? Why would you want to say, I'm part of it? It's saying you can't be. And I love Christianity also, you don't even have to sin. It starts as a baby. You're born into it. You don't even have to do anything to be separate.
Originals.
That's right. Which used to
father.
be sex.
The sins of your father's father.
Oh my God.
And your father's 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 father.
I didn't even think of that phrase, the sins of the father. That was running through my head the other day, but that's exactly it. It's getting to separating you from your birth father, or saying you have to take on his weight, but also it's separating us from our godly father, which does make him sinful. If he could actually condemn us, he's not a loving creator. It's an absurd idea. The arrogance on which the laws of chaos stand cannot be more apparent than emerge here. Here is a principle that would define what the creator of a reality must be, what he must think, and what he must believe, and how he must respond believing it. Wow! But Christians think they're worshiping him and following the laws. They have no idea how arrogant they're being, assigning judgment and horrible attributes to him. I didn't even think of it that way, that like they're assigning attributes that are arrogant, claiming that they know who God is and how he must be and respond. That's actually quite brilliant. I will speak for him, yeah, because I know. And so you're overriding, and a big piece of this book too is that we are not allowing our creator to be our creator. We're trying to be our own creator.
Even
and that's where you see that.
With him, I will speak for him.
I will speak for him, I know. But it's because I worship and honor him. It's a real twisted, and now you're getting into the double bind that Alan Watts talks about. It's not even seen as necessary that he be asked about the truth of what has been established for his belief. We don't even go and question it. No, that's sacrilege if you dare to question that God wouldn't send you to hell.
You just prayed about it.
That's right. His son can tell him this, and he has but the choice whether to take his word for it or be mistaken. So now you're making God, you're defining God. This leads directly to the third preposterous belief that seems to make chaos eternal. For if God cannot be mistaken, he must accept his son's belief in what he is and hate him for it. So this is something that's deep underneath. Now it's going to get into something that's deep underneath this mindset that a Christian would never be aware of, to realize that we think God is absolute and can't be mistaken. So if we assign these beliefs to him, truly he has to hate us for it. And that's what he's angry about. But we don't get to that, because no Christian thinks they're being arrogant and assigning values to God. They think they're following the rules of God. See how the fear of God is reinforced by this third principle. Now it becomes impossible to turn to him for help in misery because he hates us.
Well, he's punishing you.
He's punishing us.
This is why you're in misery. It's
right.
because you did bad.
Because you did bad.
And if not, you should think about the bad that you did because you're getting bad.
And he has to hate us for doing it. Yeah. And so now, we can't turn to him. So now it creates even bigger separation, even though we think that creates faith and turning to Jesus. Maybe that's why they worship Jesus and not God. Maybe because they think, I can't connect with God because I have sinned, and so my only goal. There's something going on deep under there they're not aware of, but this is pointing at. Creepy. For now, he has become the enemy who caused it, to whom appeal is useless, right? So appeal is useless to God because he is the enemy. Nor can salvation lie within the Son, whose every aspect seems to be at war with him and justified in its attack. Right, and they never get to that. Of course, if you think God's out to kill you and punish you, you're justified in attacking him and then justified in attacking each other. And this is what's deep underneath. And now is conflict made inevitable beyond the help of God? For now, salvation must remain impossible because the Savior has become the enemy. And that's why we can kill each other in the name of God, because he's a bloodthirsty...
I'm saving you.
Because he's out to get us all, really. There can be no release and no escape. Atonement thus becomes a myth, which is at-one-ment. And vengeance, not forgiveness, is the will of God. So this is why it's not about equality, but it's about vengeance. Vengeance is the will of God. From where this is how vengeance can show up in religions so much, but they don't get that. They never get to this point. From where all this begins, there is no sight of help that can succeed. Only destruction can be the outcome, and God himself seems to be siding with it to overcome his Son. Think not the ego will enable you to find escape from what it wants. That is the function of this course, which does not value what the ego cherishes. And the ego is the part of you that's human, like that I think is me, the physical body. The ego values only what it takes. So this is the disconnected. The ego is the disconnected portion of you, the portion of you that's disconnected from God. So you're only your physical self if you're not connected to non-physical or your inner being. The ego values only what it takes. This leads to the fourth law of chaos, which, if the others are accepted, must be true. This seeming law is the belief you have what has been taken. Or you have what you have taken. This is fascinating. By this, another's loss becomes your gain, and thus it fails to recognize that you can never take away save from yourself. This is the constant game we're playing, where we think we can defeat someone else and be made powerful. We don't realize that we're all connected. Since we're separated, we think we're all separate, and so I can gain from someone else. But when you realize you're all connected, the only person you're ever taking from is yourself. Because you're one self. Yet all the other laws must lead to this, for enemies do not give willingly to one another, nor would they seek to share the things they value. And what your enemies would keep from you must be worth having, because they keep it hidden from your sight. And this is the part that gets really heady that I was trying to think through yesterday. All of the mechanisms of madness are seen emerging here. The enemy made strong by keeping hidden the valuable inheritance that should be yours, your justified position and attack for what has been withheld, and the inevitable loss the enemy must suffer to save yourself. Thus do the guilty ones protect their innocence. Were they not forced into this foul attack by the unscrupulous behavior of the enemy, they would respond with only kindness. But in a savage world, the kind cannot survive, so they must take or else be taken from. So this is fascinating. It's talking about a very sort of deep psychological thing of where eat or be eaten comes from, and that people who would say they're Christian would say, well, if they weren't behaving this way, I would be kind. Or if they didn't choose to sin, right, you forced me to, I have to put you to death because you murdered someone, and now you're the enemy, and I'm just replicating what God would do to you. Right? It's a similar type of idea, but it comes down even into the basics of our society right now, where we are okay with hurting and insulting someone just because they think differently than us. And I've been trying to get to what are we mad about? What do we want from someone? And I guess that's what it's saying. We think that we have to get them to protect our innocence or defend what we think. It's very weird. And now there is a vague, unanswered question, not yet explained. What is this precious thing? This priceless pearl, this hidden secret treasure, to be wrested in righteous wrath from this most treacherous and cunning enemy. Okay, so it's asking it. It's like, what are we after? What do I think by killing someone I gain? Or by insulting them or canceling them or whatever it is, withdrawing my love? It must be what you want but never found. And now you understand, quote unquote, the reason why you found it not. For it was taken from you by this enemy and hidden where you would not think to look. He hid it in his body, making it the cover for his guilt, the hiding place for what belongs to you. Now must his body be destroyed and sacrificed, that you may have that which belongs to you. His treachery demands his death, that you may live. And you attack only in self-defense. I was thinking about this too with war. Like, what is it when we're actually killing another human in front of us? Like, I understand the governmental issues we have and everything, but at the end of the day, like, war is human to human. And what goes through your mind and what you get out of killing that person? Is it, I get to go home soon? My cause is furthered? Like, there's nothing that killing that person really does other than stop him from killing you because you both think you need to kill each other. Otherwise, what? It's very odd.
Also the first one. I get to go home soon.
Well, I'm thinking that's it. Yeah, I get to go home sooner, right? Like, this person holds my salvation for what I want in some way. And now I get why Neville Goddard said I didn't want any part of the draft. And he's like, I didn't have to run away. I didn't have to dishonorably discharge. He just imagined he wanted no part of it, and they honorably discharged him out of the blue for no reason when there was a draft in the 40s. Because I think he got something of this. Like, why would I want to kill the man in front of me? Even though horrible things were going on in Europe and it needed to be stopped, at the end of the day, it was human to human. But what is it you want that needs his death? Can you be sure your murderous attack is justified unless you know what it is for? And here a final principle of chaos comes to the rescue. It holds there is a substitute for love. Oh, good. It's going to answer my question. This is the magic that will cure all of your pain, the missing factor in your madness that makes it quote unquote sane. This is the reason why you must attack. Here is what makes your vengeance justified. Behold, unveiled the ego's secret gift, torn from your brother's body, hidden there in malice and in hatred for the one to whom the gift belongs. He would deprive you of the secret ingredient that would give you meaning to your life. The substitute for love, born of your enmity to your brother, must be salvation. It has no substitute, and there is only one. And all of your relationships have but the purpose of seizing it and making it your own. Never is your possession made complete, though. So this would be similar to Jesus, isn't it? Even inside Jesus's body, we think there's some kind of salvation. Like, if you want to get really weird with it, somehow I think that the substitute for love that excuses death and destruction and violence is somehow it's going to save me. Never is your position made complete, and never will your brother cease his attack on you for what you stole. So in other words, murder begets murder. Nor will God end his vengeance upon both, for in his madness he must have the substitute for love, so God also needs salvation, and kill you both. You who believe you walk in sanity with feet on solid ground, and through a world where meaning can be found, consider this. These are the laws on which your sanity appears to rest. These are the principles which make the ground beneath your feet seem solid, and it is here you look for meaning. These are the laws you made for your salvation. They hold in place the substitute for heaven, which you prefer. In other words, this makes earth hell, basically, because we think we need to eliminate others to get our salvation in some ways. And even if it's just like eliminating others' opinions so we can feel like we're right, that's still a lighter version of this, rather than love each other.
Don't forget, we also assume we're going to hell.
Well,
So this is probably better.
Right. This isn't even hell. We think this is the good part. when really heaven is here. They hold in place the substitute for heaven which you prefer. This is their purpose. They were made for this. There is no point in asking what they mean. Okay, maybe I should stop asking. That is apparent. The means of madness must be insane. Are you as certain that you realize the goal is madness? No one wants madness, nor does anyone cling to his madness if he sees that this is what it is. What protects madness is the belief that it is true. It is the function of insanity to take the place of truth. It must be seen as truth to be believed. And if it is the truth, then must its opposite, which was the truth before, be madness now.
But a crazy person just doesn't know they're crazy. If a crazy person acknowledges they're crazy, they're no longer crazy, they're sane.
But you're saying Christians are crazy is essentially what this is pointing out, that their beliefs make no sense, which I've been saying. Something about it makes no sense. But if you believe it's true, you don't even question it. And so that's why they're so obsessed with blood and violence and punishment and suffering. I need to see how Jesus suffered, and I need to watch the blood of Christ run down the face of someone I'm angry with. Like, it's all so gruesome. So it's saying, and if this is the truth, then its opposite, then must its opposite, which was the truth before, be madness now, which is that we're all connected. Everything is about love. God is love. Such a reversal, completely turned around with madness, sanity, illusions true, attack a kindness, hatred, love, and murder, benediction, is the goal the laws of chaos serve. Wow, that is an intense statement. Attack is a kindness, hatred is love, and that's how, and murder, benediction. This is how we excuse the hate that we are spewing on each other. These are the means by which the laws of God appear to be reversed. Here do the laws of sin appear to hold love captive and let sin go free. And yet they think they're on the side of love and eliminating sin.
They're doing it for you. You're welcome.
Here it says, can you paint rosy lips upon a skeleton, dress it in loveliness, pet it and pamper it, and make it live? It says, how can some forms of murder not mean death? Can an attack in any form be love? What form of condemnation is a blessing? Who makes his Savior powerless and finds salvation? Let not the form of the attack on him deceive you. You cannot seek to harm him and be saved. Who can find safety from attack by turning on himself? And then down here at the bottom, which I love, it says, there is no life outside of heaven. Where God created life, their life must be. Any state apart from heaven, in any state apart from heaven, life is an illusion. At best, it seems like life. At worst, like death. Yet both are judgments on what is not life, equal in their inaccuracy and lack of meaning. Life not in heaven is impossible, and what is not in heaven is not anywhere. Outside of heaven, only the conflict of illusion stands, senseless, impossible, and beyond all reason, and yet perceived as an eternal barrier to heaven. Illusions are but forms. Their content is never true. I got goosebumps. So that's saying exactly what Abraham, without getting into that intensive a conversation, is saying, that everything is heaven. All we have to do is believe we're connected, believe we're part of heaven, be happy, and heaven happens. We are keeping ourselves out of heaven. And how? With all of this conflict and blaming everyone else for how I'm feeling, which is based on these, because I think it's going to give me something. They have my salvation, and so it's going to make me feel better.
Just like God wants.
But I am projecting
because it's you punishing yourself.
Right, but we don't see it. I think it's somebody else has something for me, but you're right. It's deeply based in this. And what this gets into isn't even Christianity. This is saying that our whole belief system and being here, we think we separated ourselves from God. And it gets into saying that we created our body. And so there's a deep, deep reason to it. But you really see it in Christianity because it's a common in the West and excuses the attack. Other faiths don't necessarily encourage attack on other people. But that's fascinating to me, that I think that by attacking someone else, I'm going to feel better. I mean, we don't go as dramatic with it as it's going to give me my salvation, but we do think it's going to make us feel better, and it never makes us feel better. It gets us deeper into it, which is what Abraham's saying, that the more you focus on the problem, the more it's the problem, the deeper you get into it, and you're never in the solution. And the solution is what? Unconditional love all the time for everyone, and not caring what other people do, which in and of itself withdraws the attack from everyone. And when I stop attacking others, I stop attacking myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all the same, and as long as I'm attacking someone, they're attacking me. Yeah, you just to stop attacking, you start loving. That's what Jesus was doing, and that's why he was saying the kingdom of heaven is within you. He was saying it's in your mind. If you believe in unconditional love, in well-being for everyone, people are healed in your presence, everybody loves you back, and that's how you produce heaven on earth. Yeah,
you're in heaven.
Because we're all connected and we're all together. All right. Thanks for that. That really helped having you here, which is another principle in the Course in Miracles, which always says, if you have, and it's in the Bible, if two minds meet, it's way more powerful than one mind. And reading that, I've read that a lot. I've never had the insight into that I just had with you. Thank you. He's over there. And of course, you are also helping. Hopefully you can join our connection of that, because some of this language is real heady and it can be real tough to get to like what it actually means, but it's big. It's the only conversation. It's the biggest conversation, and it's how we get around this really intense attack we have going on each other. I had some real questions in that, like what's the right way to handle that, and so